When you are ready. Good morning, council colleagues, SEC staff, state agency and legislative representatives, and the public. I'd like to call this May 7th meeting of the Social Equity Council to order. It is now 10:01 a.m. This time I'll call the roll. Councilman Abercrombie.
Here.
Councilman Betts.
Present.
I am here. Councilman Gaddis.
Here.
Councilwoman Gordon.
Here.
Councilwoman Hawkins.
Present.
Councilman Jefferson.
Here.
Councilman Karpowitz. Councilman Medina. Councilwoman Naeem.
Here.
Councilman Shirley. Councilwoman Skyers Thomas. Councilwoman Valeries.
Present.
Councilman Walton.
Present.
We have a quorum. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the April 2nd, 2024 SEC meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I think I need to abstain from this one because I wasn't at that meeting.
Thank you, Councilman Abercrombie. Great. And the next is the approval of the April 17th, 2024 SEC special meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Good.
Any discussion?
Yes. I just had a question about the minutes. It basically there's under action items, there's the community reinvestment grant makers, and then it has the motion and second, and then there's another section on discussion. And that's where it's indicated that I abstained from that vote. I just wasn't sure if that should be in the section under action items or under the discussion section, where it has the motion and second.
Can we make that amendment? SEC team?
Sorry, not to be
No worries.
detailed, but just want to make sure it's the right record.
I'm sorry, will that amendment be made?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yes, it will be made.
Thank you. Okay. So I guess all in favor with the amendment of the special meeting
Aye.
minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing potential litigation. May I
So
have a
moved.
motion? Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Madam Chair, apologies, I missed the roll call, but Melvin Medina present for today's meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? Great.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Council members, you should have received a separate calendar invite for the executive session. Please leave the Zoom meeting and enter the Teams meeting for the discussion. We'll return to the Zoom following executive session. To the public, we appreciate your patience and we'll return shortly. Thank you. Thank you all for your patience. I'd like to resume this meeting in the Social Equity Council and recall the roll. Councilman Abercrombie.
Here.
Councilman Betts.
Present.
Here. Councilman Gaddis. Councilwoman Gordon. Councilwoman Hawkins.
Present.
Councilman Jefferson.
Present.
Councilman Karpowitz. Councilman Medina.
Present.
Councilwoman Naeem. Councilman Shirley. Councilwoman Skyers Thomas.
Present.
Councilwoman Valeries.
Present.
Councilman Walton.
Present.
Thank you. We'll now resume our agenda action items, the documentation for which was sent to the council.
just want to
Oh.
call them, sorry. I
Thank you.
got back in after, sorry.
No worries, thank you. The documentation for which was sent to the council via email yesterday. May I have a motion to deny equity joint venture application ACRE 0015689?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Next, may I have a motion to approve equity joint venture application AMHF 0008282?
So move.
Have a
Second.
second. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Next is the Executive Director's Report and a presentation on the Social Equity Plan Review process. Director Clay?
Good morning, everyone. So in my report this month, go to the next slide, please. My usual table of contents, staffing updates, program updates, what's new, and the goals for Office of the Council. So in one day, I received the certified list for all three of the positions that we posted. My priorities and hiring are as such. I have already convened an interview committee for legal program director. We received 18 certified applications, but we received well over 20, 25, 30 for the position itself. Same thing with the program manager. That will be my second position to fill. We received 25 certified applications, and research analysts, we received 14 certified applications, and that will be the third position I will work on filling. In our program updates, we have a revolving loan fund, we have community reinvestment, and we have outreach and education. So for the Canada Business Revolving Loan Fund, we had 17 applications. One was withdrawn. 4 of the 16 are at the underwriting phase, and 2 of the 4 are at the letter of interest, which means the loan offer will be made to the applicant. So we have 1 more that has questions on litigation. And if that litigation is found by the underwriters to be okay and not in jeopardy of affecting the assets of our loan or the assets of the company and our loan, we will then issue a 3rd letter of interest, which means we will have 3 loans offered to social equity applicants. And we are still working on collecting the data from, the application materials from the rest of the applicants. So it's a little bit slower process than we expected, but applications were submitted, they were incomplete, and the program manager is working with the applicants to collect the information necessary to complete the underwriting. There was recommendation sent out to the council. We talked about the community collaboration, and so the recommendations, and I sent a more detailed plan. Community collaboration, $13.4 million. The source of the funds would be 12.6 from the Social Equity Innovation Fund. And I apologize, I know the name was changed to that fund. And then the SEC in its budget had a line item or has a line item for community reinvestment. And in order to make up the 13.4, it is recommended that we use $741,000. And I believe it's actually $332,023 to make up the 13.4. Priority spendings discussed with the council and recommended crisis housing, access to childcare, and food insecurities. And just a high level on what that means for crisis housing. Again, this is information that I did send out to the council, but for crisis housing, it's to fund the support of regional homeless hubs. And those hubs actually are the first point of entry for people who are housing insecure, whether they're losing their housing, whether they don't have housing, whether they need housing. Access to childcare, funding to support facility improvement grants to early childcare programs located specifically and exclusively in DIA communities. So all of the money is recommended to be spent only in the DIAs for those facility-based or home-based childcare centers that that are offering and will be creating additional seats for childcare, in addition to those programs that are offering non-traditional childcare opportunities such as third shift, second shift, and weekends. In the areas of community food insecurities, again, during our conversations, many of those organizations and agencies that are providing food for the community are operating with residential equipment, which means like a residential refrigerator, a residential stove. They don't have proper storage facilities and or prep materials and equipment to properly feed the community. Either they're working with older equipment or they're working with, again, residential equipment, which does not allow them to feed the community in its best way possible. So we're recommending that we give $1 million to each of the grant managers to allow them exclusively to provide grants for upgrading equipment to address food insecurities in DIA communities. I don't know if anybody has any questions around that community collaborative spending recommendations. If not, I can move on to the presentation on how our social equity plans are approved. But this month, in the month of April, we approved the following 4 social equity plans, and we approved 1 workforce development plan. Okay. I think some Councilmember Gordon, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I had a quick question on the social equity plan. Is it for if someone is working with a local, say, mayor's office or public health department, is that permissible under the social equity plan, or do they have to work with a 501c3, like their community partner? Does it have to be a 501c3, or are they allowed to work with, say, the local public health department as a part of their social equity plan, like how they're going to collaborate or partner?
We'd have to know a little bit more about what the collaboration was and what the partnership was. So if you have details, I can tell you.
I'm just asking, like, based on this, like our bylaws or statutes or anything, does it specifically say it needs to be a 501c3, or does it not specifically say that? And is that up to this? So it's at the discretion of SEC staff.
Right. So,
okay.
Sorry. It does not say that it has to be a 501c3, but it does say that it has to be an organization that is serving the DIA community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So I wanted to kind of go over the way that we are reviewing social equity plans. So depending on the length of the plan and the supporting documents that are provided, it could take staff 6 to 8 hours to do a comprehensive review of that plan. Currently, we have 4 staff reviewing the plans. And, sometimes we receive plans that are upwards of 75, 80 pages. So whatever is submitted, we review all of the documentation that is submitted to us. Once we do an initial review of the social equity plan, we prepare what's called our internal document. It's a master checklist. And that's where we note that the plan is meeting at least 7 of the 10 sections of the plan. So there's a statement of purpose, and the 7 sections are highlighted here in red because in the blue sections, you can't kind of get to those unless you've gotten to the red areas. So the statement of purpose basically tells the staff what DIA community the plan is being written to and the intention of the applicant in putting the plan together. In some cases, applicants tell us that they have causes that are near and dear to their heart, to the culture, to the value of the company, and they kind of explain that in the statement of purpose. So we have an idea of what we're looking for and what we're looking at going forward in reviewing the plan. Each company is required to submit a minimum of 2 goals. And those goals are how they're going to impact the community that they have chosen to written their social equity plan for. All social equity plans, I would say to you as well, are written to a DIA community. Even if the company is located in a non-DIA municipality, they must write the plan to the nearest DIA to the municipality where they're located. So for instance, if a company is located in Glastonbury, they actually have a couple of options. They can write the plan to Manchester, they could write the plan to East Hartford. So it would be up to the company to determine what community they would like to go in. And the other area for the number and the types of community needs assessments. So in order for the company to be able to put together a plan and to understand what the needs are in the DIA communities, we require them to have community needs assessments, which are similar to the community conversations that we had in DIA communities to understand what the needs of those communities are as far as reinvestments. So we asked them for detailed information on those. We do recommend that they start with elected officials, people who have been elected or people who are in charge of working with and addressing issues in the community that are referencing the war on drugs. And so that's where we recommend that they start. They can really start where they want, but we do look to see that they have spoken with people who are in charge of and charged with working with DIA residents and communities that have been affected by the war on drugs. In the metrics basically tell us how they plan to measure success in the programs that they're doing. A lot of our social equity plans are around volunteer services in the DIA communities, at soup kitchens, at homeless shelters, creating programs or improving programs for teens, for youth, for reentry, expungement clinics. There's a variety of initiatives that have been presented. And so the metrics tells us what is it that you're going to expect if you're going to do an expungement clinic. You know, how many folks do you plan on helping with expungement? How many clinics are you going to run in the course of a year? So it's the details and how you plan to measure your success. The contact list of interviewed community stakeholders, that lets us know who they actually spoke with in the community and who those stakeholders were. Sometimes social equity plans are coming through with business owners that are near where the company is going to locate. And those are not the kind of stakeholders that we're speaking about. We're speaking about those stakeholders, again, who are responsible for having an impact or creating programs and services for the residents who have been impacted by the war on drugs. In addition to the having an impact in the community, the plan also calls for the company to commit to purchasing goods and services from businesses in the community that are certified MBEs. And so that's an opportunity for local businesses to have contracts with these cannabis companies that are coming in. And we have seen a variety of businesses that are going to be doing business with the cannabis companies in a variety of areas. So we have cleaning services, we have background checks, we have accounting services, graphic design, and just a whole host, plumbing, construction. So the companies are usually do a very good job in identifying how they're going to work with MBE companies. And then there's 5 letters of support, up to 5 letters. We will accept 3 really good letters of support, but they can't submit up to 5. We do not accept letters of support from member organizations such as chambers of commerce. We don't accept letters of support from other cannabis companies, and we don't accept letters of support from companies that the cannabis companies will be doing business with. Those letters of support come from stakeholders in the community, organizations that will benefit from the plan. And they're telling us that they have actually read the plan, they understand the plan, and they support the plan and the impact that it will have in their community. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the review of the social equity plan. because I have another slide that talks about the approval process. Okay. We can go to the next slide, please. So in approving a social equity plan, if the plan meets 70% or 7 of the 10 sections, a recommendation is made, a letter of approval is issued, and the DCP is notified, and the e-license portal is updated. And that is the same case for the workforce development plans as well. If the plan does not meet the criteria, we first review the plan. If it doesn't meet the criteria, we have what's called a detailed deficiency notice that is sent to the company via email. And it outlines the sections of the plan that did not meet the criteria. So in a lot of cases, people will submit a social equity plan that talks about how they're going to train their workforce. That is the workforce development plan. That is not the social equity plan. And so we would tell them that this is a social equity plan. It's meant to further equity, that all hiring and workforce development and training opportunities and intentions should be addressed in the workforce development plan. In some cases, the applicant did not conduct and did not show that they had proper community conversations. And so we will tell them that, you know, you must go back and have conversations with those people who are serving DIA residents and have programs and services that are offered to DIA residents. Once a deficiency email has been sent, we suggest that the applicant return the plan to us, the revised plan to us within 7 days. However, if they need additional time, and sometimes they do, based on what the deficiency is, if the deficiency is they did not meet the criteria for community conversations, that's something that could take them longer than 7 days to do. So we always offer them, we say 7, but if you need additional time, they can certainly have as much time as they need to revise their plan and to resubmit it. If a plan is resubmitted, a revised plan is resubmitted and it still does not meet criteria, we then contact the company and we offer them a live technical assistance session so that we can help them understand where they may be missing the mark as far as the meeting the criteria. And so once those conversations have been had, it's usually that the plan is then rewritten and resubmitted, and 9 times out of 10, the plan is approved. It's very rare that after a TA session, that the plan is not recommended for approval. And that has to do with, we've had a couple of occasions where the writer of the social equity plan is insistent that what they have put in the plan should be accepted, and it's not. So I'll give you an example. We have had occasion where the writer of the plan is insisting that they want to have goals around serving the LGBTQ community. And that is okay if they have a specific information in there that this community or the community that they're serving has been affected by the war on drugs. But if it's generally just it's LGBTQ because they have been marginalized, that is not acceptable. And so sometimes they insist that it is, and we insist that it's not. So it takes a little bit longer for us to convince them and to further explain to them what the DIA communities are and how their plan should be furthering social equity in the impacted areas and to those who have been impacted. And then we follow the process after the plan is recommended for approval, a letter is issued. In some cases, when companies tell us that they are kind of under the gun, because a lot of times what happens in the submission of a social equity plan is folks have not timed the submission of the plan. So the social equity plan and the workforce development plan are both required parts of a full and final licensing step. And so if the DCP is coming into your operation in 2 weeks and they're going to do the final walkthrough, and the company may not have submitted their plan, or they may have submitted their plan 4 weeks ago and DCP is on the way, we have taken that into consideration and moved that plan up to try to accommodate the schedule. But we also do a full, again, comprehensive review of the plan, but we try to work with the company as close as we can to get them to go. We made the decision very, very early on in this process that we would not deny a plan because it is a part of the licensing process. And so we continue to work with the company until we can get them to an acceptable plan that has an impact. What else did I want to say about this? Yeah, so that's kind of the process that we go through. There have been some concerns about plans that have been with us for some time. Normally, that is because the company has not returned the revised plan to us. We are very timely. We meet every week. I meet with my staff and we review any social equity plans that are before us, as well as workforce development plans that are before us. And we also have a SharePoint where we are tracking sort of the timing, or we are tracking the timing of when the plan was received, when the initial review happened, when the second review happened, when the technical assistance happened, and how long it has been since they have provided us with a revised plan. In some cases, when it's been a while, we reach out to them to remind them, to ask them if they have any additional questions around resubmitting the plan. And again, if we need to do another TA session, we are happy to do that. So sometimes, like I said, if there's a complaint that there is a length of time, you got to get it back to us. We're very responsive, and we try to set a 3 to 5 day window around reviewing the plans and keeping the plan moving. Like I said, with the understanding that it is part of the final licensing process, and we know that is very important. So that is my presentation on social equity plans. I don't know if anybody has any questions. And I know I also sent out even more detailed information, and I'm happy to have any conversations with folks around. We will be making some recommendations going forward for the social equity plans. We don't want to get a plan that's 70 pages. We have found that a plan that is 15 pages gives us enough information to move and to recommend and approval for the plan. So we'll be doing some recommendations around how people are submitting and what they're submitting. We're not asking them to solve world hunger. We're asking them to address issues in a very, confined area in a specific DIA community.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilwoman Gordon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Executive Director Clay. So I know you give an outline, and in the beginning you said it takes about 6 to 8 hours to review.
Mhm.
But there have been reports of some applicants waiting 3 to 4 months. So you said your staff is meeting each week. What would you say is causing those lengthy delays? So some applied in November and didn't get approval until April. What's the holdup? And is there a way for your office to kind of create like a best practices so people don't end up kind of waiting 4 to 5 months to get their plan approved, like easy? I know you said you're advising to make them shorter, but it might be helpful if there could be kind of a checklist about just some way to figure out how to make it easier. And I just love to know why some are taking 4 to 5 months and others can get approved within a month or so.
Absolutely. So usually the delay in the plan taking so long to be approved is, as I mentioned earlier, when we do the initial review, we send out the deficiency email. The deficiency says this is where your plan did not meet the criteria. And we actually tell them, you have to have certain, you have to have community conversations. And then again, when we do the technical assistance session, we recommend and we give them some pointers and we give them tips. If the company does not return the revised plan to us in a timely manner, and again, whenever they return it to us, because it's that person, so whoever does the initial review carries that plan through its approval, so continues to work with the applicant. So when there has been a very lengthy delay in the approval of a plan, it's because the company has not submitted the revised plan to the staff in order for us to review it. And then we've had also a couple of, we had an occasion where a social equity plan was approved and the staff person read it, and then the company submitted another plan. And then the staff person had to read that plan because we weren't quite sure how that was different than the plan that you just submitted like 2 days ago. And the applicant said, oh, I was just, raising it. I was just sending it to you so that you could review it, but, you had already sent it. So the ones that take longer are usually because the company has an area that requires more time for them to go out and get the information. As I mentioned, what can take the longest time is having the proper community conversations and doing the proper needs assessment. That means you have to go into the community. You have to talk to people in the community to understand what the needs are in that community for you to set your goals.
And so just a quick follow-up question. When you say proper, is there like criteria that's spelled out, or is that all by the discretion of SEC staff for what's proper
You
and what's
received,
not?
I sent you the criteria. I sent you the definitions of what, what is a community conversation? What is, so you have that in the materials that I sent.
Councilman Jefferson. Councilman Jefferson. Councilwoman Naeem.
Thank you so much. I guess just piggyback off of the kind of last bit of the statements there in terms of a lot of the applicants are required to go into the community and better understand the needs. Like something for the council to bring for consideration, should we think about, are there ways where we build that into part of the social equity plan and for execution in year one? My concern is we've got social equity applicants that are already having challenges, trying to bring their business online. If this is holding them up, 4 to 6 months, is there something we can do from a criteria or process perspective to help make sure that they're able to get their businesses online, get their licenses, but also ensure that they're having the right conversations and really focusing in on the right way of creating impact? I think it's something that we as a council should review and think about, because if they can't get their businesses up and running in a timely manner and they're losing money because of that, it's not really going to help them be able to create impact in the community.
So I can, if I may, anytime a company has told us, and again, it's up to the company to kind of time. We encourage, and we've done multiple live webinars, training sessions. I've gone out to speak with groups about the social equity plans and how they're approved and the timing of them, because it takes some time. These are business plans, similar to business plans that companies are writing. And it takes us, and we are very serious about reviewing the plans. So if a company has indicated to us that they are preparing to open the doors, we will work very, very closely with them as to not cause a delay. Now, that doesn't work in all cases. So in some cases, they may have had the workforce development plan submitted and approved, but the social equity plan wasn't submitted and approved. They may submit the social equity plan 2 weeks prior to DCP coming because either they just finished it or they didn't, like I said, take into consideration the time that it would take for us. But I have, and I know my staff has, worked very, very closely as to not cause a delay in folks opening their business in every way that we can. So we will continue to do that. Looking at this and streamlining it, again, you can't open a business unless these 2 plans are approved. So we're very open to any ideas and suggestions that people have in streamlining the process. And like I said, happy to take your recommendations on the information that I provided regarding how we do this.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's not for discussion at this meeting, but I think at some point, I would love, whatever appropriate committee this falls into, to take a look at, just from a process perspective. Again, we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that is causing, some sort of delay because of what needs to be done, or creating an unfair advantage, for non-social equity applicants. So I think it's worth just kind of looking at and better understanding, making sure, we're as tight as can be. Because we've heard the concerns. I understand that. I just want to make sure that we're sort of reviewing it in detail. Thank you.
Okay. And I just, so know that it does fall under policy and governance. And we did discuss the process of that we will be using to review the plans with the Policy and Governance Committee.
That was done last year, correct?
It was done this year.
Was it earlier this year? Okay.
Yeah, we only, so the council in September of last year gave my office the authority to approve the plans to not have people wait a month for the council to vote on the plans. So we are able to approve those plans at really at any given time. But once the council gave us the authority to do that, we put together this detailed process. We did the timing, the days, what we estimated it would take us, and then we reviewed that with the Policy and Governance Committee.
Councilman Jefferson.
Morning, Madam Chair, through
Morning.
you. And thank you, Madam Executive Director, for your presentation on the social equity plan. Are you done with your report?
I am not.
Okay.
I have just a couple more slides. If I can, there's
Yeah,
no more
can we have-
questions. I'm happy to go through or
Oh.
answer any questions you have for
Yeah,
me.
because the agenda has social equity plan review process bulleted, and I thought that was the end of your report. So I'll let you finish your report. And
Okay.
then,
Yeah, I put it in there just to know that, so that the members of the council would know that there would be, in my report, there would be
Okay.
that. Okay,
yeah, I have a question on your report, so I'll wait.
okay. If there's no other questions on social equity plans, I can move on to the rest of the report.
Just a quick question. Can you give me or help us understand the decision not to allow applicants' legal counsel to participate in the technical assistance?
We do not disallow their legal counsel to participate in the conversations. What we ask them is we ask them for a single point of contact, because it gets to be very confusing when we have 4 or 5 people. It could be the writer of the plan, and then it could be the attorney for the company that may call us and ask us a question, or send us an email and ask us a question. But on the technical assistance sessions that we have, I mean, I've always allowed anyone who wants to be a part of it, because there's a lot of different people that are taking in and helping to write this and to write the plan. So we do not generally deny legal counsel from being a part of this.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, Anna, next slide, please. If that's it. Okay, so we are continuing to do outreach and education around the workforce training that is being provided in the entry-level retail training and management training through Oaksterdam University. In addition, we're continuing to work with CohnReznick on putting together webinars and manuals and information on how to get through the lottery in qualifying as a social equity applicant. So we are still working on those processes. Like I said, we're out in the community letting people know that we have a boot camp that is available for entrepreneurs who think they might want to be a cannabis business owner. So it kind of gives them all of the information, the detailed information, and hopefully they will be able to make an educated decision whether business ownership in the cannabis industry is for them or not. And those folks who are seeking to work in the cannabis industry, the workforce training that is being offered at the entry level goes over the federal law, the state law, goes over health and safety. So giving you an idea of the things that you need to think about as a cannabis worker. So we continue to be involved in those outreach and education.
Director Clay, can I
Yes.
just ask how many participants we have in that program?
They are not open yet. We are now marketing them. So we are
Okay.
going and out in the community, letting people know that they're there. We did a presentation in New Haven a couple of weeks ago, and we are going to be going down to Bridgeport to talk with folks in that area. But we're also going, our outreach program manager is actually going around to some of the cannabis companies and dropping off information, because the companies that have already employed DIA residents, they may be interested in them taking this certification program through Oaksterdam University. And so we're doing as much as we can to physically be on the street and introducing people to these training opportunities.
Thank you.
We have our next round of community conversations are planned. So we are in the process now of putting together the personal services agreement, working with the folks at Trusted Messenger in New London, in Norwalk, in Stamford, and in Bridgeport. And then the next stop for our community conversations, we will be looking for Trusted Messengers in Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia. We've met with the mayors of these three communities, and actually not the mayors of New London. Well, we did meet with New London, but we have Trusted Messengers in those areas, but we have met with the mayors in Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia. What we're finding is as we get into the smaller communities, the community advocates, the Trusted Messengers are becoming harder to find because we're dealing with slightly different issues. So when you talk about going to like Winchester, and Enfield and some of these other really, really small DIA communities, you're talking more rural poverty as opposed to kind of the issues that the urban communities are facing. So the Trusted Messengers are just, we haven't been really able to identify them. So the mayors, especially in Meriden, Bristol, and Ansonia, have offered to help convene their communities, and then we might be bringing in the facilitator to conduct the conversation. So we're kind of having to be a little crafty in how we move into the smaller communities to get the information that we're looking for, and then to inform the residents of what the council is doing and how we can benefit them, and how we will be benefiting them in the future. And again, I mentioned the May 16th, we are scheduled to be in Bridgeport to go over and to promote the workforce training, as well as boot camp and information on the lottery and reinvestments of the council. And we can go to the next slide. So the goals that we will be working on for May, again, conducting all the interviews for the 3 positions that we have open, executing contracts for community reinvestment, community conversations, doing outreach and education for prepping for a lottery. So we continue to call it pre-lottery. And we have been working with, and the last couple of ED reports in the last couple of meetings, I was remiss in not thanking Council Member Andrea Hawkins, who I've been in conversation with about a strategic plan. So most recently, we had some conversations about the strategic plan, and we are planning to conduct that, invite members to join us in the month of June. So we looked at the procurement process and how we might be able to hire a facilitator, and we have all that information and have just provided Councilmember Hawkins with a 1-page around the council that will help the facilitator help us put together a strategic plan. So Councilmember Hawkins, I apologize for not acknowledging you sooner, but thank you very much. You've been very generous and kind in having conversations with us.
I'm happy to help.
Thank you. And then the next slide is the committee meetings. So for May, the Reinvestment Workforce Committee meeting will be rescheduled. I think we are working on that with the members to find a date that is doable for all. And the Outreach Committee, May 10th, Policy and Governance, May 16th, Personnel Committee, July 24th. And the next council meeting for June 4th, we are planning to have that, as discussed in December, to have that meeting in person. So hopefully we will have that opportunity to see you all again in person in June. The next slide is, I think that's it. We remind you all that we have a Facebook page. We ask you to please follow us on Facebook. We ask that you please tag us in anything that you're doing that the council and the public might be interested in. And if you haven't visited our Facebook page, please do so. And that's it for my report.
Councilman Jefferson.
Yeah, good morning. I'm having some connection problems here, so I apologize in advance. If I get shut off, I'll come right back on. I can assure you of that. Through you, Madam Chair, and maybe this is not a question for the executive director, but for the chair. This morning, we received a correspondence that you sent out. It was a request, it appears, from members of the Black Puerto Rican Caucus to I guess, oversee or discuss issues around the allocation of funds, and it seems as though it was a request. And the executive director mentioned in her report, she discussed reinvestment and spending. And I was, in preparing for this meeting today, I was prepared to do just that, discuss reinvestment spending. The council has already voted on the timeline, and now a request was made to halt that timeline. I'm very uncomfortable with halting a timeline. I can understand if we don't want to go forward with the community collaboration recommendations, which is $13 million, that supposed to be directed at crisis housing, access to childcare, which is something the governor was very concerned about, and food insecurities. Now, we haven't decided anything about the 13 million, but we certainly decided something about the 22 million to go back into the DIAs. The council voted on it. It was a part of our timeline. And I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that, and Madam Chair, you had mentioned in your email that you wanted to table that. And I guess that was a request too, because that has to, I would imagine, be voted upon by the council. So I just want to be clear before we move forward, because I am totally in favor of moving forward. I understand the request. I respect members of the Black Puerto Rican Caucus. However, we have a job and a mission to do as a council, as a social equity council, and reinvested. And I want to remind everyone during that war on drugs, no one paused and called for a pause when Black men and women were being locked up. No one said pause. And so when we talk about reinvestment, I don't want to hear the word pause. This is about reinvesting in our community. So I want to ask the chair, are you making a unilateral decision for us to halt our process, or are you making a request that the council honor the request of the Black members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus?
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson. My email this morning said, based on this communication, I will request to table the Reinvestment Workforce Committee and the third Finance Committee action items under agenda item number 8. So the word request was in the email. I am not making a unilateral decision.
Okay, so I make a motion that.
A point of order, Madam Chair, it's on the agenda under item 8. Maybe we can, I plan to discuss it when we do the reinvestment.
Yes, that was my plan, was that when we got to that agenda item that we would have this conversation.
Okay. Fine, I'll wait to that we reach that agenda item.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything further? Thank you again, Director Clay. All righty, so we now move on to our committee reports, beginning with policy and governance. For that, Chairman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The April meeting for policy and governance was canceled because the issues that were to be discussed were discussed on the previous day at our special committee meeting. So we had no meeting, and as Director Clay said, our next meeting will be this month. I think May 16th, I think was the date, or Thursday. So there's no report for April.
Thank you, Chairman Shirley. Next is reinvestment workforce. Chairwoman Ng.
Thank you so much. We also did not have a meeting last month. We met as a full council in our special meeting to discuss the reinvestment recommendations, as Councilman Jefferson alluded to. We also received the email this morning, and pertaining to that, I was hoping today, in regard to reinvestment, Director Clay can provide us some more insight on what the conversation was with the caucus that the email pertains to. I was not aware of any reinvestment related conversations were happening, and so I was not privy to them. So I would love an update on what that was, so that we can actually discuss the potential recommendation that might be coming on the table.
you would like me to respond?
Yes, Director Clay, if you could provide an update on what that meeting was about, that the email was alluding to.
So I was actually invited to attend a meeting with Chairwoman Comer with the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. I wasn't initially sure what it was, just there was not an agenda provided. But I was, did some emailing saying, what should I provide? What should I bring to this meeting? And I was told that the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus wanted an update on the Social Equity Council. So that meeting happened on Friday. And primarily they asked questions. And again, I brought what I thought I should bring. They wanted information on the budget. They asked for information on reinvestment. I did bring them the information, or I spoke about the reinvestment of the $22 million, talk with them about DIA communities. I mean, they asked me a variety of questions. There were probably 15 members of the caucus that were there. I think Chairman Comer, I think there were about 15 members. And I just answered the questions that they asked me about. They asked about the process. They asked about who makes final decisions? How does the council vote? So one thing that I felt that they were that they misunderstood is that I don't think they understood that I staff the council and that I'm not the council, or I don't direct the council. So again, they asked about voting and who makes the votes. And, I explained to them that I bring recommendations based on information the council is asking me for, and the council conducts the votes.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead if you didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I thought Chairman Comer was going to say something. Okay.
What were there concerns that they were raising during that meeting?
So I believe their concerns were around not understanding the full process. Like they asked how were the grant makers selected? And I explained to them that, we received applications through ANOFA. In many areas, we had one single applicant to be a grant maker. And so we weighed and we reviewed, and if that grant maker met the criteria that was set by the council, then the information was moved forward to recommend that they be the grant maker in that area if there was no reason why they shouldn't, and to adhere to the timeline that the council has set for reinvesting funds. But it was all, I think it was more of getting a clarification. There were a couple of comments made from members that indicated that these funds were not being used in the manner that they thought. They said economic development. I asked for a little more clarification on what economic development was and what was that definition. To them, I did not get that. But I believe they were speaking about, business development. And I explained to them that in many of the areas, especially in the areas of access to childcare, that these are childcare businesses that will be receiving grants to create spaces to sustain their businesses and to provide childcare too. But they're all businesses, and that all of the recipients of the grants, and especially in the violence prevention area and even in our pilot, these are nonprofit organizations that are businesses that employ people, that provide services to the community. And that's how they were selected.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I can just add, in terms of the economic development, Senator Winfield in particular asked about our alignment with Section 128, which, if this body recalls, at the special meeting, I did share the context of that. And it outlines that the funds be appropriated for access to capital and technical assistance for businesses and funding for workforce education and community investments in the DIA. So I think what he was looking for was how we are aligning to that particular section of the statute, which the BPRC members generally seem to be in agreement that that was their thoughts around how the money was supposed to be sent out. Everyone has the letter. I think because the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus continues to have questions about process, and I respect Councilman Jefferson's suggestion, but I feel an obligation based on their request to share that request with this body. And so I'm seeing hands going up, so I'm going to stop. And Councilman Geddes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm not going to say much in this meeting, but I really don't care about the letter. I didn't even read the letter. You know, my mother wants to write letters to groups to stop things too, and we're not obligated to stop anything. We've had these open committee meetings and discussed this plan. I'm not wholly happy with the plan, but I'm not happy with the Mickey Mouse nature of this whole process, if that's what we want to call it. I think there's a lot of agendas, there's a lot of strong personalities in play, and I'm very concerned. However, I do have friends that are members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, and I respect them. But I just want to be very clear. I don't think under any circumstances are we obligated to entertain this request letter. But I am open to see what the rest of my colleagues think and believe, and I'll hold judgment until then, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Councilman Geddes. Councilman Medina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the BPRC appointee, obviously it puts me in an interesting position. I think the way I'm approaching this is I was not in the meeting with the BPRC, and it strikes me fairly unique that the outcome of that meeting was a letter requesting a pause. And so I support a pause in light of trying to understand what actually happened in the meeting and why there are concerns among the BPRC members. In light of reinvestment being a strong priority of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus and their allies, my sense is that perhaps some of this is due to miscommunication or misalignment on what the values of what the purpose of the funds are, whatever it may be. But I support the idea of clarifying those conversations and reassuring folks who we ultimately need as allies moving forward. And so I think it's a reflection on not having full insight on what happened in the meeting, but that the letter seems like an action that represents the meeting did not go well.
Thank you, Councilman Medina. Councilman Walton.
Yes, thank you. So I guess my question and my concern is that kind of this meeting happened and, you know, the council didn't necessarily have the know that this meeting was happening. So I'm not sure if the executive director was prepared to represent us in that sense. But out of respect to the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, I think we should probably have a conversation with that. I don't, in terms of a pause, I hope there's not a delay in getting this money to the communities that desperately need the money that we voted on. And I think that's the last thing that we want to happen. And so I guess the question becomes, if there is another meeting, who is going to be invited to that meeting to sit down and talk to them, with them, and hear their concerns? Because for me, quite frankly, it just came out of the blue. As Councilman Geddes said, then it sounds like things are at, well, I'm going to put words in his mouth, so I'll take that back and say, I don't know what the cause is, but at the end of the day, I think our responsibility is to get this money to the communities that we've been assigned to get to, and we don't want further delay. We've talked about, you know, the delays that we've had in getting the money out, and so it'd be unfair to this process. I think it'd be unfair to our communities if a pause causes a huge delay in getting the money to our communities.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gordon.
I just wanted a little bit of clarification. Are we discussing this now and voting on this now? Or are we going through the committee reports? Because I'm just kind of, if we're having this conversation now, I'm happy to say my piece on this. But so, okay, now, all right, got
Yeah.
okay. So I think I'm I will say, I echo the comments of Councilman Medina. I respect the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus as the representatives of our community, of many of our communities in the legislature. And if they've got questions, we should answer the questions. One of the things I just want to make sure that we're doing moving forward is like open and transparency. We should just know what the next steps are to make sure that they continue to stay informed, and how do they want, and just be very clear. I'm sure Madam Chair will keep us informed here, but just want to make sure that we all kind of know what's happening moving forward. I think, yes, a lot of things have happened. We've been building this plane, flying it at the same time. Things have been coming at us. I think I will say, as a member of the council, we've done the best that we can to this point as council members with the information that we have and how we make decisions. But I am definitely in favor of holding, because I do not believe that they sent that letter without really discussing and thinking about the ramifications of this and what it will mean to the communities that they represent. And they would like to make sure that we are doing due diligence with these resources. And as I said, I hold specifically the chair and the vice chair in very high regard. So if they're asking for a pause, I am very happy to give that pause so we can shed some light into the process, have them understand better what we're doing. And then I didn't see it as we're taking the money. I saw that as let's have a conversation. And I'm happy to honor that conversation and continue to move forward and continue to do the great work that we're doing. I think, as we all know, there's lots of things have happened in the timeline, and I think it gives us an opportunity to kind of reset and create better, processes with how we do things as a council, and make sure that we have really good checks and balances moving forward.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gordon. Just before I get to Councilwoman Naeem, I just want to clarify. So the chair of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus had reached out to me, I think maybe 2 days before the meeting, to say we want to have a conversation, and asked me to share with the executive director. So I did. I do regret not providing that information. There's kind of a flurry of things going on, and that's not an excuse. And I own that I did not properly advise or alert this body that the meeting was taking place. So mea culpa. I will also just add that I think, to Councilwoman Gordon's point, they are not requesting to take the money. They are not requesting that we not send out the money. One of the things that came up as the list of organizations that received funds last year was passed around, there was some frustration on the part of some of the caucus members, because they said we had given money to these organizations, and had we known, we could have not been duplicative in terms of our investments. So that, I think, is one of the reasons why they wanted to better understand our process. So hopefully that additional context is helpful. Councilwoman Naeem.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that additional context. And I think Councilwoman Gordon hit on all the points I was hoping to make. Ultimately, my concern here is there seems to be, and I'm hearing it from others outside of the caucus as well, concern on the process and where funding is ultimately landing. And I do think, I've shared in the past, I've got some concerns on sort of the approach that we're taking, but we want to get the money out the door and into the communities. I do not want us to create more harm in while trying to be efficient and expedite getting the funds out the door. So to that point, Madam Chair, not to pause discussion, I think we can continue having discussion, but I would like to make a motion to pause any disbursement of funding until we've had a conversation with the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus to understand their concerns and have discussed them as a council.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we'll continue our discussion. Councilman Betts, I'm just trying to get folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet, and then I will come back to you, Councilman Jefferson and Councilman Walton. Councilman Betts.
So, good morning, all.
Morning.
My concern is, and I have to say, right, and I respect the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus's request. I think the question would be as well, like, what does that pause look like? Because again, you know, to my understanding, things are always a time constraint, right? And just saying, how soon will we be able to meet with them to discuss this? Because again, we have voted on that, and again, we're serving our constituents. We don't want them to look at us like we're not, you know, supporting them in their needs. So I think the question would be, and I think it needs to be some clarity around what is that process and how long is that going to take, so that the community that's watching, they don't feel as though they're being neglected.
Thank you, Councilman Betts. Councilman Jefferson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I'll be voting against the motion, primarily because my position is aligned with that of the governor, who we met with and who said he wants this money out the door. He was very much aware of who this money was allocated to and for what purpose. In fact, he asked for our assistance in childcare and a couple of other areas. So he had no issues or no questions about the allocation of these funds. We met with him, and he's been made well aware of the direction that the council has been going in. Secondly, we voted on this timetable. Everyone had an opportunity to hear us, to ask questions, and this goes back to the pilot. Everyone knew what we were doing. Every single person who was paying any sort of attention knew what we were doing. And now we have to pause. And to Council Member Betts' point, and it's a good one, what does that pause even look like? I'm not even sure why we simply can't move this thing along and have the conversation anyway. The money can still go to the grant makers. We can still have that conversation, and we want to vote on a change in the criteria, so be it. We have not voted on the community collaboration recommendations. Folks have been yelling, let's work with the state agencies. Let's work with the state agency. There's been no pushback from anybody, any legislator, on working with the state agency. There have been no discussions about economic development. We laid aside $13 million for that sort of collaboration. And now we want to say, let's pause on that. Here's my concern. I want the community to understand this. You know, if we wait until June 30th and we lose that money, I do not want that to fall on the council. This is not the council. I do not want to be held responsible. The executive director should not be held responsible. Her staff should not be held responsible if we lose this money. Anything can happen after the fiscal year. I don't care what promises are made. Anything can happen after the fiscal year. And it bothers me, and I'll say it again, when this war on drugs took place, no one gave our communities any consideration about pausing the incarceration of Black males and Black females and the destruction of our community and the destruction of Black families. Not a single person. And now when it comes for payback, for reinvesting in our community, for these disproportionately impacted areas, now we're asking for a pause. I will be voting against this, and I ask my fellow council members to join me in that vote. Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree 100% with Councilman Jefferson and Councilman Betts. As I read this letter, it seems that they're asking for an open-ended pause. It says, until the BPRC has an opportunity to better understand the process and plan for the distribution of funds. So we don't know when that is. So I believe that we need more clarity around that so that we may set a date certain. And as Councilman Jefferson said, there should be no delay in getting the money out. But I think we do owe it to the council. I mean, I'm sorry, to the BPRC to respond to their request without holding up the actual distribution of funds.
Thank you, Councilman Shirley. Councilwoman Skyers Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Much of what I was going to say was covered by Councilman Shirley, so I do appreciate that, and I echo the sentiment. But just in addition, I was wondering if the BPRC is possibly looking for. Are they looking for a memo? Are they looking for a process document? It's not clear to me what the request is. So I'm not comfortable in giving a pause unless I understand what they're looking for. So I'll pause there. Thank you much.
Thank you. Councilman Gaddis.
Before we get hot and heavy in the discussion, I just want to say I appreciate all of you. And I know this is not easy work, but we always have to be mindful of the bigger picture. And I think this sets a dangerous precedence where groups could just send us letters and we pause. I respect the members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, but we are not obligated whatsoever. We took a vote, and let me be clear, because I'm listening to what people are saying. People who voted no or express some dissension with the plan are using this as an opportunity to revisit their sentiment. This is about the BPRC, or whatever the acronym is. A lot of acronyms of government to keep up with. This is an opportunity for them to seek understanding so we could continue down our path, and the mouthpieces that go and meet with people without telling us, you guys go give them the understanding. We are responding to situations that we did not create as a body. I wasn't at the meeting. I wasn't told about the meeting. This letter that is supposedly expresses their concerns was given to us at 6 o'clock in the morning or something. I didn't even read the nonsense, quite frankly. I will be voting no, and I hope my council members join me in voting no against this whack motion.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. Councilman Walton.
Thank you. And I agree with the sentiments of the folks that spoke. While I do agree that we, out of respect, should respond to them, and I hope we can do that in writing as well. But I hope, again, I would vote against this as well, because I just think we need to continue. The work has been done, but we should have a conversation to answer it. And I would prefer that we have several people around the table to continue to have that discussion.
Thank you, Councilman Walton. Councilman Betts.
Yes, to you, Madam Chair. So I do have a question as far as the safeguards around those funds, because what I'm hearing is individuals is, they're really afraid of June 30th coming around and then those funds just disappearing. Are there any safeguards around those funds that, they're asking? Is there any conversation around them telling us these funds aren't going anywhere? Because again, we're supporting the community, right? And if those funds go somewhere, we still have to be the ones who have to be in those communities, and those are the individuals that will be attacking us, if I must say. So I think my question is there any safeguards of saying, okay, if we do pause this, these funds aren't going anywhere?
Thank you, Councilman Betts. There is a section of the statute. I can try and find the exact place, but it does say that the funds will be in this non-lapsing account, and it does roll over. And that it cannot be used for any other purpose. But that said, I certainly respect the concerns that have been voiced. And again, I want to, to Councilman Gaddis's point, apologize again for the timing when the request came in and the speed with which there was it turned around. And I don't have any other excuse other than to say it was a bit overwhelmed, the timing of this time of year. And we all have our separate jobs. And so I apologize that I did not send that information out beyond the executive director. Councilman Walton. Oh, you're all set? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm all set.
No
Thank you.
worries. Councilman Medina.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate the same point again, and offer a suggestion of like next steps, right? But like a meeting was had and the meeting seemed to go pretty poorly because a letter was drafted and said, we don't seem to trust this process. That's the best understanding that I have. And so it strikes me that there needs to be a follow-up meeting that should be had within the next week or two to build confidence with the BPRC on the plan in place. To Councilman Gaddis's point, not because we owe it to them or anything like that, but because it just seems to me that they are strong allies in the future of the SEC. That feels like a fairly low level lift of a follow-up meeting to figure and unpack again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like it was not a good meeting. That's the only thing that would generate a letter like this. And so that's why I'm in favor of voting for a pause, because like I need to understand what happened that generated this type of an action, which feels fairly unique, and just raises more questions.
Thank you, Councilman Medina. Director Clay?
I wouldn't categorize the meeting as going poorly. What I would say is that we have done a lot of work. I meet with the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus annually. So I did meet with them in January. And again, they just want an update. They ask about our budget. They ask, just several questions, but it's an annual meeting that I have with them. I do follow up with several members throughout the course of the year as we're moving forward. The Black and Puerto Rican Caucus is also a part of our distribution. So when the NOFA went out, it went to them as well. Any information that we send out as far as constant contact is concerned, it goes to the members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus as well. What I took away from the meeting is that there is a lot going on. This is complex. What we're doing here is complex. And there were some areas that the members of the caucus had questions. There were members in the room that I had seen, that I saw for the very first time. So I can't imagine that they were updated and informed, well informed, as to the work that this council is doing. So I wouldn't say it went poorly. I would say that there are still a lot of questions and a lot of understanding, as we have all, it's complex. So I think that's what they're looking for, is to have a better understanding and not have been in constant contact with the council and the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Director Clay. Any further comments? Okay, we have a motion on the table. Councilman Karpowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hearing really 3 lines of potentially lines of positions here amongst us. And one is an adamant no. One is a strong inclination to yes, out of for reasons that seem primarily about the relationship with this caucus and its importance to us as a group strategically. And then I'm hearing a wish for defending the integrity and timelines of this council and all the work that's been done. And I'm not clear how that middle position, if people don't like that characterization, I'll just withdraw it, of course. Are we in a position to vote on something like that? Like, I don't know. I think a halt, I'm feeling if we accepted a halt, that would be quite divisive amongst us, the council members here. But a number of us, I think, not substantively responding to this letter and engaging to the concerns raised from a caucus that's important to this council would also be divisive. I don't know what language is going to be moved here for us to vote on, but I'm wondering, is there a moment for us to discuss that? Like, what is time required to engage this that might not be a halt? That is to say, right? When is the first money leave? I'm sorry, I'm unaware of those, but can we fashion our own response that creates something more like a common ground amongst us at this council in response to this letter? Is sort of what I'm asking for. Are we being presented with a sort of a yes or no vote on whether to halt?
So Councilman Karpowitz, there's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, and that is to honor the request of the council. So, I mean, I suppose there could be an amendment to that motion if that's what you're seeking to do, and a friendly amendment if you wanted to make that. So that would be my response.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm new to these processes and the rules of procedure. Would I make a motion that we table a discussion about an amended, amended language?
So we have to vote on the motion that's on the floor, and that
Okay.
doesn't sound like an amendment to that motion.
Right, okay.
Councilwoman Valeries, and then Councilman
Is there a
Gaddis.
possibility to put a amendment to it that puts a time constraint on the pause? So that we're just saying we're pausing for a week or whatever?
So the motion would be to pause the distribution of the funds for 7 days, so until the 14th? Is that what I'm hearing?
Through you, Madam Chairwoman, I
Yes.
like what the councilwoman said. That's exactly where I was going. Maybe a little bit more time than a week. I was thinking 10 business days and what we could do in that time is we could send an emissary of folks to meet with the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus to level set the situation, and then revisit this in 10 business days to say whether or not we want to halt and pivot, and then we'll have more information about the specific concerns. I think that is a great way to move forward.
Thank you, Councilman Gaddis. Councilwoman Naeem, are you open to a friendly amendment to adding 10 business days to this pause?
Yes.
And I have a second to that friendly amendment.
Second, I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you. Great. Okay, shall I do an all in favor, or would you like a roll call?
All in favor is sufficient, Madam Chairwoman.
All right,
Are we voting on the amendment or the full?
we're voting on the amendment, which would be the full, because it was a friendly amendment, so it's part of the
Sure,
motion.
yep, okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any, are you opposing?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic, motion passes.
Madam Chairwoman, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. What we just did, real quick in that 1 minute, that's exactly what I would love to see moving forward. That sort of discussion and compromising. That was very great. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you all. I think it was a robust conversation, was an important conversation. And again, I know I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but again, I apologize for not making sure that you all had that information about the meeting. I will reach out to the co-chairs of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus to let them know about this vote and make sure that when this next convening is scheduled with them, that everyone is aware and invited so that we can have a full conversation about this issue. Councilman Medina?
Just a question on the follow with BPRC. If there a member count for participation? Because total number of us equals quorum, and then it's a public meeting. Like, is that how that works?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer. I will certainly look to find. I imagine that if the BPRC calls the meeting and then they call us in, perhaps it is a public meeting, but I will certainly get the details and make sure that we are not running afoul of any FOIA rules.
Got it. Yeah, I'm interested in participating, but also want to be cognizant of just that trigger effect. But I think,
So
lesson learned here to Councilman Gaddis's point, right? Like, I do think this was an effective compromise, and in part to would love more insight into the conversation. So I feel comfortable voting, in favor of the plan because I've been part of the conversation. So I know those are tough tension points because, when we meet at a certain number, it's a quorum and whatnot.
Great, thank you. My understanding is that it is a public meeting, so I guess I don't know if it's our special meeting. I don't know if it's their special meeting. Either way, I will certainly find out and get clarity on that and circle back as soon as I possibly can. Okay, let's see. We move on to the Finance Committee. The committee met on April 9th, at which time in addition to sharing the monthly balance sheet, which you all have received as part of your materials, the committee voted to recommend to the full council that an addendum of expenditures would be added to the monthly balance sheet report that the committee receives. So I would like to bring that forward to the full council for consideration. And if the body is in agreement, ask for a motion to accept the Finance Committee's recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, Councilman Jefferson, are you?
Yeah, my connection went out. I'll just abstain because I didn't hear the full message. I don't want you to repeat it. I just didn't hear what you said. I was frozen.
Okay. It was just to add an addendum to the monthly balance sheet that the Finance Committee receives, an addendum of expenditures.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good.
I do have a
sorry.
question. Are you
Sure.
on your report, just moving forward, how's this committee now being chaired? I know, are you still the
I was gonna get to that in the good of the order.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And the committee also voted to recommend to the full council that a threshold be set for expenditures. And any expenditures beyond a $50,000 threshold would require approval of the full council. So I will again ask for a motion to accept the recommendation of the Finance Committee in that regard.
So moved. Second.
Great. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm inclined to vote for that motion. I just want to be very clear, Madam Chair, and you and I have had, for full transparency, have had this discussion. I simply don't like the narrative that is in the public. Which was reported in the paper. I don't, and folks could disagree with me. I do not believe there was any questionable spending or misuse of funds by our executive director or her team. I just don't like that narrative. It casts a bad light on members of this council, on their reputation, and I do not want to be associated with anything like that. So if this motion is to enhance what we do and protect what we do and create guardrails, I'm all for it. But I do not want it to mean that it's a response to the false narrative that's out there that the SEC is engaged in questionable spending or misuse of funds. I've been a member of this council since its inception. We've never had that issue, and up until this point, and I don't want anyone to have any thoughts whatsoever that anybody on this council is associated with anything like that. There was a misunderstanding. There was a lack of clarity, whatever you call it, that led to that narrative being created. That's all I have to say through you, Madam Chair, and I will support the motion under, basically that narrative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jefferson, and certainly the threshold is really more around the council members having line of sight in terms of what's being spent. I think that there was, at least from what I heard, was that there were council members that did not know the specifics around that expenditure. So that was, again, this is more about furthering transparency than promoting a narrative. Councilman Abercrombie.
Yeah, I'm just in support of this motion. I think it's best practice to have this in place. All the boards that I'm aware of have this type of threshold where there requires board approval. I know some are at 100,000, some are at 10,000. So it's really just a matter of what this council is comfortable with. And I guess 50,000, I would argue it probably should be a little bit lower than that. But if this is what the recommendation is coming from the Finance Committee, then I'm happy to support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Abercrombie. Councilman Jefferson.
Yeah, one last question. What does that really mean, Madam Chair? Because are we how much are we restricting the ED and her team to do their job? I just don't want us to engage in micromanagement And I agree, by the way, with Councilmember Abercrombie. No, I disagree. I 50 is one thing, should be a little higher, but just help us understand what that entails.
So if there is an expenditure that exceeds $50,000, it would have to come before this council for approval.
And anything under 50,000, that's what I'm asking about.
Anything under 50,000 would not have to come before the council for full council for approval.
And what's the process now in terms of procurement and so on and so forth? Because I know a lot of things don't come before the council. And I think, and I'm sure you're involved more so than anybody else in the day-to-day operation. What has to be approved and what doesn't have to be approved by you in particular as the chair? How does that work? Just so that we have full transparency and understanding as a council.
Sure. So there's the process is it goes to the DECD business office, and then the second level of approval, I believe, is Councilman Abercrombie. And then if it is over a certain another certain amount, then it has to be signed by the DECD commissioner. Councilman Abercrombie will send information to me to ask about it. I have asked that we have, before I say yes to something or that before it's approved, that we have some clarity. There have been some suggested buys, I will say, that I would like to see as part of a strategic plan, and I don't think that's unreasonable, to understand where things are leading to. And I've had this conversation with the director where there are some things that I don't necessarily understand. And I've said it before this body. I don't know necessarily how potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on billboards helps us in terms of the work that we're trying to accomplish. I don't necessarily understand what an advertising agency is going to do to help us, particularly in absence of a strategic plan. So I'm open to pushback. I'm open to suggestions if others think that this shouldn't happen. Again, I am just one cog in the wheel. If DECD signs off, just be mindful that DECD signs off because they are housed for administrative purposes. They will sign off if the paperwork is in order, and that is it. It is not about whether they have questions of whether the expenditure is appropriate, how it fits or aligns with the mission of our work. So that is that's right. Councilwoman Gordon.
I know we haven't gotten to the outreach committee. I have to hop off. I will give that update at the next meeting. I really apologize. We were supposed to end at 12, so I have something else happening. So if anyone needs, I can provide a written report, but I just wanted to apologize for needing to hop off and not give the outreach committee update.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gordon. Councilman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add a quick note to what you said. I agree with you. And I think even if my understanding is DECD and makes approvals of certain financial expenditures, I just think it's also be helpful if the Finance Committee is notified when certain expenditures are anticipated. Not that it requires approval, but just notification so there's an opportunity to ask about it if necessary.
Thank you, Councilman Shirley. Councilman Abercrombie.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Councilman Jefferson said about micromanaging. It really is a delicate balance. You don't want to have a council approving every little purchase for pencils and paper clips. But there does need to be some level, I think, of reporting out to the council, getting approval from the council for major purchases. And where that sweet spot is, again, I think it should be lower than 50,000, but that's the recommendation we're getting today. So again, I'm happy to support that.
Thank you, Councilman Abercrombie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Finally, I have, oops, I'm sorry. Moving on to Outreach Committee, Chairwoman Gordon just said she had to hop. Personnel Committee, turning it over to Chairman Jefferson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, everyone should have a copy of the expectation letters for the Executive Director of Social Equity Council. We discussed this at the last personnel committee meeting. I know some folks had scheduling conflict, and so was not there. The committee voted to move this to the full council for your approval. Everyone should have a copy of it. I think they're good letters. I think they make sense. And the third item, I'm talking about the 2 letters plus the duties of the SEC Personnel Committee, all spelled out there. And I just like make a motion that we accept the recommendation from the Personnel Committee to approve the letters of expectation for the Executive Director, for the Chair, and for the duties of the Personnel Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Abercrombie.
Yeah, I'm a little torn here. I'm trying to, so in my experience, the governance committee generally oversees and has purview over committee assignments, committee structure, and council member rules and requirements. And that's different than what I think a personnel committee should be for, which is primarily for staff, including the executive director. So I may be misunderstanding, or my experience may be off, and I'm happy to be corrected. But in reading these documents, I don't know that it's appropriate for a personnel committee to be putting forth recommendations on the rules, to put it plainly, rules to the road for the chair, when I think that's more proper in the governance committee. Again, I may be wrong, and I'm happy to just go forward with today and vote yes, but I just want to put those concerns out there.
Yeah. If I may respond to you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had that discussion about rules. These are not rules, it's just letters of expectations. That's what committee members thought would suffice more so than rules. That's why these are not rules, just letters of expectations. And so that was the middle ground. That's what we came up with. And, folks had the opportunity to vet the letters and the the policy governing the duties of the personnel committee. So that's where it came from. And the council actually, prior to, I'm not sure if you were with the council at the time when we voted to create an adjunct committee, and that's what the personnel committee serves as. And that's how we got to this point.
Any further discussion? Oh, Councilwoman Naeem.
Thanks so much. Madam Chair, I believe you had shared some similar feedback on taking a look at our committee structures and making sure that they are aligned. I know it's not relevant to this vote in particular, but to address some of the questions that Councilmember Abercrombie had. Is that something up for discussion later today, or is that for a future meeting?
I guess it would be for a future meeting, and thank you for reminding me of that. So there was some duplicative language, and I think Councilman Jefferson, that was discussed in the personnel committee meeting, just making sure that there's alignment so that there's not 2 committees addressing the same situation, which I think would have fallen under policy and governance. So if I recall correctly, Councilman Shirley said he was open to removing that aspect of his charge from the policy and governance committee, given that the personnel committee had outlined it. Councilman Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope this helps. But had a conversation with Chairman Jefferson, and the thought was that he would bring the recommendations of the personnel committee through policy. He sits on both committees, and then we would have a discussion, and then when it's appropriate for policy to put certain matters before the full council, we would do so.
Councilwoman Naeem, does that work? Okay. Any further discussion? Great, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you. Finally, I have 3 announcements for the good of the order. Given that I've assumed the role of chair, I've asked Councilman Gaddis to serve as chair of the Finance Committee. I've also asked Councilwoman Hawkins and Councilman Karpowitz to co-chair the newly formed Strategic Planning Committee. And I have asked Councilman Betts to chair the newly formed Legislative Committee. And so these are an outgrowth of some of the conversations we had during the SEA roundtable. And you know, each of these council colleagues brings significant expertise to these subject areas of these committees. So I am grateful to them for taking on these roles. So that's my good of the order. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay. Seeing, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all so much. I know we went over. Appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Goodbye.